VelociPastor is a masterpiece of a film directed by Brendan Steer on a measly budget of $36,000. For reference, the original Jurassic Park was filmed on a budget of $63 million. Although this movie is classified as horror, it is ultimately horribly bad. A fever dream of a plot, lackluster costumes, and laughable sets plague this college-level production. Speaking of that plot, let's dive into exactly how crazy it is. So the movie opens up with Doug, our main character, finishing up his service. He walks outside and sees his mom and dad. How sweet. The car blows up. So Doug runs back inside, rattled by this. Father Stewart, another pastor there, tells Doug to go to the one place God will not follow. Doug goes to China. A unnamed woman gets shot and killed in front of Doug and hands him a tooth. Doug somehow cuts his hand on this tooth and is now imbued with the power of being a velociraptor. So Doug wakes back up in America in a cold sweat and goes out for a midnight burglar attack, as all people do. He saves a woman named Carol and wakes back up at his house. He thinks that he slept with Carol. How scandalous. He didn't. So Doug runs off to do a confessional. Frankie Mermaid is at this confessional. Frankie Mermaid is a drug dealer and a pimp. He also admits to drowning a baby after stealing candy from it, and also blowing up Doug's parents. Doug lashes out and murders Frankie Mermaid. So Doug runs back to Carol and is now convinced to do a Batman impression. However, Father Stewart does not approve of his actions and takes Doug to an exorcist. Somehow this gives Stewart a war flashback. Sploosh. The exorcism fails, so Doug rips out Father Stewart's eye. Doug runs back to Carol and has an insane guitar montage with her. The two wake up to a ninja ambush. They want to go back to China to stop the source, Wei Chan. Father Stewart wakes up from his plot contrivance in Wei Chan's Christian ninja camp. Wei Chan's to sell highly addictive cocaine, then cut the supply off. He hopes the addicts go to reform at church, where he plans to take control of them. Father Stewart tells Wei Chan how dumb his plan is, so he murders him. Doug and Carol arrive in China, where they are stopped by Sam the White Ninja. Doug uses his telekinesis to yoink that sword from Sam. By the way, Sam is Doug's brother. Doug kills Sam, Carol is badly injured, so Doug goes into a gamer rage. Wei Chan shoots Doug with an anti-velociraptor arrow. Doug's hand is unaffected, however, which he uses to rip Wei's head off his body in a glorious fashion. Also, Carol is fine. Doug and Carol now roam the land fighting crime. The end. I cannot bring myself to talk about this movie any longer, so I'm passing it off to my cohorts.
Hey, it's Hannah Freeman, and I am an expert interviewer on all things movie, and I cannot wait to show you these interviews that I have just taken. Okay, and now we are with Tatum, who's going to critique the plot. So tell me, what was your opinion?
It was really bad. It was all over the place. It wasn't consistent at all, and it jumped from one thing to another in like a few minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, what was even happening? Even me as a viewer, an innocent viewer of this horrible tale, I had no idea what was happening.
Me neither. Like, going all the way to China, going where God does not follow, kind of racist.
Very racist, thank you.
True. And the whole drug smuggling thing in China was completely random, and the dude that was speaking Korean in China was insanely random.
They couldn't even get their facts straight, which, that's really bad. And, what else?
A lot of characters that died in the span of a few minutes, like his parents that died in the first few minutes, from Frankie Mermaid,
Yeah.
that then died in the next few minutes.
Yeah, it was, and then also the whole thing with a priest killing someone in a confessional, somehow breaking through whatever, like, cross things were there. Like, come on, that was just bad.
It was very random. It was not needed.
And for it to be called a horror movie, that was more a comedy, which goes to show how bad it is.
Exactly. It was not horror.
Thank you. Now we're going to welcome Allie, who is going to be talking about the costumes. So what is one thing about the costumes that really struck you as horrible?
So one of the worst things I saw was the inconsistent military costumes in the pastor's like flashback. The just costumes were everywhere. None of them were like uniform whatsoever, and you could really hardly tell that they were military uniforms.
I completely agree. And then additionally, what about the costume that kind of showed that the dinosaur is present, like the little dinosaur hand and the blow up costume?
Mm-hmm. So those were very, like, they were just terrible because they were not good costumes, and it just made you feel disconnected from the story because you're just looking at it and it's like, that's just a blow up dinosaur. It doesn't make it realistic, you know?
Yeah, completely. Is there anything else you want to add about the costumes?
Mm-hmm. So another main thing is the ending costume for the main lady.
Mm-hmm.
So her costume is showing like full everything, and it's extremely impractical, especially for the fight scene that it is. And it also kind of makes it feel wrong, you know?
Yeah, it really sexualizes her, which is almost like a motif throughout the movie, sexualizing the woman, the damsel in distress, which we're going to talk about soon. And I think that this movie is just kind of going with the classics and not really adding anything new to the film world.
Yeah, it's not adding anything new to the genre or anything new to costume making whatsoever. It's just really...
I agree. Now on to the special effects. Tell me, what is the thing that stood out to you most?
So something that stood out to me the most was how bad the, I guess, like, blood and, like, other violent things, like, whenever they're ripping the head off, or whenever the car is on fire and it just shows cars on fire.
Yeah.
But specifically, what really, really stood out to me was the head being ripped off, because it was a very obvious mannequin head, and that specific scene was supposed to be a very important part of the whole movie, but instead you're just kind of looking at it and it just doesn't.
Yeah, and then when Father Stewart was in the army and his wife was coming to meet, they just kept showing Father Stewart and the wife just back and forth and back and forth, just saying hello, like,
yeah. And after she gets blown up, it's very obvious that the blood that is on him is either paint or like tomato paste, like watered down ketchup. And overall, it's just a very bad scene and a bad show of special effects.
Yeah, and I also want to bring up the montage. We all know what we're talking about.
Yes.
It looked like a 5th grader had edited it and had passed it off to the movie producers. It was
something
horrible.
else that was really terrible about it was that while it was showing clips of the scene that was happening, it also showed clips of different times, and it felt out of place. And the music did not match the setting. It didn't match what was happening. And
yeah, it was like upbeat when it should have been like calming.
And a lot of the special effects for horror specifically as a genre should be really good and really high level. But with this, it makes it seem more like a comedy than it is an actual horror movie.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Allie. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you can come join us again.
Of course.
So Camille, what is your opinion about the setting?
I think the setting was very repetitive. They used the same 3 places. Mainly they used the woods, the same woods where Doug turned into a dinosaur, and where Carol was getting killed, and when he went to China, and when Father Stewart's friend got killed.
What was your opinion on that last scene you just talked about when Father Stewart's friend got killed?
I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like it just was there. It didn't add any extra character development or anything like that. What about any other characters? Do you think that their character development was good?
I think Carol just added to a damsel in distress trope, and it was kind of sexist because it was like portraying how women need help, but she didn't really need help. She wasn't really in danger, but it just made the plot confusing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The character development was just all over the place and somehow not there at all. And then the setting was just horrible.
Yeah.
And especially since you said it, everything about the setting and character plot development was bad. And you as an expert, it has to be true. So my main takeaway from the interviews was that the plot was very, extremely inconsistent. And it was here, there, everywhere, and nowhere in between somehow. The special effects were amateur at best. I believe that a young child could manage to make these special effects and somehow still do better. The costumes sexualized women, and they just were not uniformed. The characters had very little development, to the point where people were confused about who was who, like they didn't even know names. And then the setting itself was very repetitive. So as you can tell, this movie was horrible, 0 out of 10, and thank you to all that I've interviewed. Bye!